Well, another DJI product and another shoot that I do in the middle of nowhere. We got the FPV R4D Air 2S, and now we have the Mavic 3 Cine that we're going to be reviewing today. Doing a fun little shoot with my buddy Stefan and a bunch of other guys. But I know there's going to be some of you guys that want just like the sit down, here's the specs. We're going to do that at the end of the video. I'm going to sit down in the studio, so hold tight until then. We'll touch on anything that we miss today. But regardless, it's going to be a fun shoot, definitely worth the watch. Don't skip ahead. It's going to be fun. Yeah, this looks like a good spot. It all looks the same. Okay. Let me put this thing in park. This isn't my car. So DJI released two versions of the Mavic 3. There's the Mavic 3, that's it. And there's the Mavic 3 Cine, that's the one that they sent us. The only difference is that the Mavic 3 Cine has a built-in SSD and you can shoot ProRes 422 HQ. And in my opinion, that's a huge plus because that was a huge problem with previous drones is H.264, H.265. They're super compressed, they're hard to edit, but ProRes definitely opens that up. Easier to edit, much smoother. The Mavic 3 is actually just a little bit lighter and a little bit smaller than the Mavic 2 Pro when it's folded up. When it's unfolded, it is a little bit bigger, has just a slightly larger wingspan. You notice they also changed the plastic, so the gray is a little bit darker. The motors, the gimbal, everything is black. So black and dark gray. I think it looks really nice. I think it's a really nice redesign. They also have a nice controller. This is actually the same design as the previous all-in-one controller that DJI has been using, but they have updated it so it has OcuSync 3. That means it has just better connectivity. Some nice updates with the new Mavic 3. So what we're doing, and by the way, I would not recommend doing this to your drone. I found a spot where you can actually like clamp one of these small rig things onto the arm with some cushion on it, and it'll actually hold itself up like that. I'm gonna clamp this mount to it, and then we're gonna put it all together on the C-stand. All right, cut. You wanna stop the propellers? Just, yeah. Well, that was probably the most stressful shot of the day and the weirdest looking one. We'll see. Did you get that on camera? Me walking around. And once again, I have a storyboard, my rudimentary drawing. Pretty crappy, but hey, it's effective. So now we're just gonna get a bunch of various drone shots. We're gonna throw them all together. Nice little montage. What the? It just disconnected completely. Oh my gosh, I almost had a heart attack. It disconnected and then I look over and there's like a black thing on the ground. I'm like, crap. We're good, it's hovering. It was? There it is, it's hovering over there like, I don't know, 300 yards. So we're good. Let's get back to it. Okay, so it's doing 5K at 50 FPS. It'll also do 4K at 120. They just didn't have the firmware update available for me while I'm doing this. And if you remember, actually, the last Mavic had a 1-inch sensor. This one has a micro 4/3 sensor, so a little bit bigger, a little bit better dynamic range. Micro 4/3 is a huge sensor to fit in a drone of that size, which is nuts. It also has two lenses. It has that main lens, which is operating on the micro 4/3, and then it has a tele lens that is operating on a 1/2-inch sensor. We're gonna talk about that more in just a second. So the telephoto lens, I wouldn't really recommend it for like filming a lot of things. It'll only do 4K 30. It's only using that 1/2-inch sensor. It's mainly for exploring. It's called Explorer mode. That's how DJI has branded it. So you can turn it on and then you can actually zoom 1 times, 2 times, 4 times, 7 times, 14 times, 28. So it's mainly, there's Stefan right there. We got a nice shot of Steph. Look at you, look at all of us. It's really not that great. It's probably only passable at 1x and maybe 7x. It gets a little bit better. You probably saw the difference between 4 and 7. So cool mode to have if you need to like scout areas out, but it's really, in my opinion, not the most professional lens. I would definitely prefer the Micro Four Thirds with the wider angle lens over the Tele. Yeah, I don't know if you can see this. Look at all that salt. Hopefully we make it through. Hopefully they improve the weatherproofing on this thing just a little bit. This is the ultimate test, let's be honest. This is the test for this drone. So DJI rated this drone at 46 minutes of flight time, which is nuts because the last Mavic 2 was quite a bit less. I think around like 26, 27, is that about right? So we're gonna pop in a brand new battery. This is fresh, okay? I'm gonna put it in and I'm gonna start my start watch. We're gonna see exactly what it can do. So like most drones, this has multiple shooting modes. We got cinematic, C, N for normal, and then S for sports. On sport mode, it's obviously gonna drain more of the battery. Cinematic's probably gonna be the least drainage. So we're gonna flip between the two. Okay, so we're at 24 minutes, 12 seconds, 11% battery left. To be fair, I have been doing mostly sport mode because we're getting a lot of quick shots here. Oh, critical low power. Okay, it's forced landing, here we go. "25 minutes, not what I expected, to be honest. We're gonna throw this in normal mode once we're back in the studio. I imagine we're gonna get high 30s, maybe low 40s, but for right now, as far as I can tell, in sport, in normal, just kind of ripping it around, again, we're pushing about 25 minutes. So not bad, but not great.
Out of frame. Yes!
Well, that only took like 300 takes, but we got it. We had to end it on a high note. My shoes are soaking wet. Yeah, I think we're about ready to wrap up. Let's talk specs. My heart is literally pumping like this right now. So it's pretty obvious that the real standout feature that we're seeing this year with the Mavic 3 is the 5K 50 and obviously the much larger sensor. Everything else is honestly just like pretty much any other Mavic we've ever seen. Every year they make minor updates, so we see some updates with the image transmission, OcuSync 3.0. We get some vision sensor improvements just for obstacle awareness, all that, and then just a slightly updated design. Like I mentioned earlier, it's kind of a darker gray, some black trim. I think it's kind of refreshing. Also the smart features that we know and love are slightly updated. This one's gonna have Active Track 5.0. Unfortunately, I didn't get the firmware update in time for this video, so I'm still on Active Track 4.0. I can't really show you what 5.0 is like. As far as I know though, it's the exact same, it just has better performance. Because I know you definitely did not skip ahead to this part of the video and you saw the little battery test that we did on the salt flats, you'll know that it actually didn't do very well. So I talked to DJI after we filmed that and they told me that I was using an older firmware. So I did the test one more time, again, in my studio, new firmware, cinematic mode, no wind, just hovering there. And we got just over 35 minutes. Now remember, the advertised flight time is 46 minutes and we barely got 35. So there's a pretty big gap right there. And again, maybe they can fix it in another firmware update. Maybe it has something to do with the elevation here in Utah. I really don't know. And I wasn't expecting to get 46 minutes. I was hoping for at least around like 40, but I'm just giving you a heads up. If you end up picking one of these up, hopefully it flies for a bit longer than mine, but regardless, just not exactly what I expected. I'm gonna let it slide though, because the camera on this thing is actually amazing. Again, if you didn't skip forward to this part of the video, you already know that this thing has a Micro Four Thirds sensor. It'll do 5K 50. It'll actually do 4K 120. Again, the firmware update is not available for me to do that, but it is capable, apparently. It'll also do 1080 200 frames per second. So I don't know why you'd ever want to use that, but it's there. This is also the first drone that I've ever wanted to shoot anything past 30 frames per second. That one shot where the drone flies through the water and it sprays up, that was a shot where I was super glad that I even had 50 frames per second to work with. Because normally I'm shooting drone footage, and if I have a shot like that I want to slow down, I could only slow it down by like 80% because I'm shooting at 30 frames per second. So having the 50 frames per second was actually one of the best things about this new drone. And again, obviously dual lenses. We got the telephoto up here. We got the normal lens right here. 24mm on the normal, 161mm on the telephoto. Telephoto is using a 1/2 inch sensor. The main lens is using the micro four thirds. Looking at the footage after the shoot, I wouldn't say that the telephoto footage is terrible, but when you compare the two, I mean, clearly the main lens is better. If you do happen to need a shot that requires zooming in really far to like that 7x zoom, then yeah, I think the telephoto is an option. But again, you're only doing 4K 30. There's no option for 5K 50, 5K 24. You can't even do 4K 24. It's just 4K 30. Now, we didn't have a chance to shoot in low light because we were on the salt flats, basically in the middle of the day. But I did do just a quick test here inside the office. And to be honest, they both seem to perform almost identically. Actually, I think the Mavic 2 might smooth out that noise even better than the Mavic 3. Kind of surprising because I thought that the bigger sensor on the Mavic 3 would increase low light performance by a pretty good amount, but I guess not. So I don't consider myself to be a photographer, but I did snap a few photos while we're on set. This thing is still a 20 megapixel photo sensor, but remember this is micro four thirds, so the background blur between this and the Mavic 2 Pro, they're gonna be different. It's got the wider field of view. Overall though, I don't think it's gonna be a very big upgrade in the photo department. If it had more megapixels, I could see that being a thing. But besides those differences with the sensor and the lens, really not much has changed. Now, I do have pricing from DJI. There were some rumors floating around about what the price was gonna be, and those are actually mostly correct. So the standard Mavic 3 is gonna go for $2,199 US, and then the Fly More combo is gonna go for $2,999 US, and then the Mavic 3 Cine combo is going for $4,999. Now to put that into perspective, the Air 2S goes for $999. So that means that the baseline Mavic 3 goes for more than twice as much as the Air 2S. And then if you did the Cine version of the Mavic 3, that's literally 5 times as much as the Air 2S. So is this worth $5 grand? For me personally, I rarely, if ever, pick up a drone. Like 99% of the shots I get are on the ground with my camera. Like it's pretty rare that I'm pulling out a drone. So $5,000, definitely not worth it for me. Even if I was getting the baseline Mavic 3, $2,200, still that price tag is really hard to justify because again, I'm rarely using a drone. When I need to, I'm pulling out the Mavic 2, I'm pulling out the Air 2S. So unless you're doing like real estate videos or wedding videos or any other genre where you need aerial footage from a Mavic, I really don't think this is gonna be worth the upgrade for you. As much as I love ProRes and the 5K sensor, the built-in SSD, all that good stuff, I really don't think that the jump from like an Air 2S or Mavic 2 Pro going to a Mavic 3, like that's a pretty big price gap. I don't think it's worth it. Now, I don't want to like think for you. I want you to decide if it's going to be worth it. But definitely like watch this whole video, watch another couple of videos, formulate an opinion for yourself, really decide if that's worth it to you. That's honestly pretty much it though. I had so much fun flying this drone. Huge thanks to DJI for sending it out. We had a ton of fun making that intro sequence. Hopefully you guys liked it too. As always, we talk about how gear is important, but it's also not the most important thing. Far more important are the skills behind the gear. So if you need a boost, you need a jump start into the filmmaking industry, go ahead, check out Full-Time Filmmaker. I've linked it below. You can learn from people like me, from Jake, from Parker, from Nate. We go in depth in a bunch of different industries. Tons of stuff that you're not gonna find on our YouTube channel. Plus we have a huge Facebook group with, I don't even know how many, like 15, 16,000, tons of filmmakers where you can go and ask questions and get help and feedback. So if that interests you, even in the slightest, click the link below, check it out. We've also got a free 1-hour filmmaking training. Again, it's totally free, no strings attached. Just sit down with a pen and paper, take some notes. I guarantee it's gonna be worth your time. And that's pretty much it. As always, if you guys have any further questions, please let us know.